In January 1961, in the dead of the night, a young African leader was taken away under guard, beaten, handcuffed, and moments later, gunshots were fired. His name was Patrice Lumumba. He was Congo's first elected prime minister, and he was just 35 years old. With just 10 weeks in office, he was gone. Lumumba had advocated for a free and united Congo and for the broader independence of Africa, but to some of the world's most powerful countries, he was seen as dangerous and unpredictable. Why was this young leader viewed as such a threat? How did he rise so fast and fall so hard? This is the story of Patrice Emery Lumumba. We're going to talk about his legacy, and we're also going to talk about why his name still sparks debate today. Let's talk about it. Patrice Lumumba was born July 2nd, 1925, in the Kasai region of what was then known to be Belgian Congo. He was from the Batetela ethnic group and raised in a Catholic household. Educated at both Catholic and Protestant mission schools, Lumumba was bright and outspoken. He later completed postal service training with distinction and became fluent in 5 languages: Tetela, French, Lingala, Swahili, and Shiliba. He was also a self-taught thinker. Lumumba read widely: European philosophy, French literature, and Enlightenment writings. He also wrote poetry and often expressed anti-colonial and nationalist ideas. Before entering politics, he worked as a beer salesman and then moved on to work as a postal clerk in Stanleyville, and he did this for years. But even as his life is going on a totally different trajectory, he stood out as a bold and articulate voice, one that was ready to stand against authority. Lumumba's political journey started in the mid-1950s, during Congo's gradual political awakening. In 1955, he became regional president for a Congolese trade union for civil servants. This was one of the first signs of his push for local leadership under colonial rule. That same year, he joined the Belgian Liberal Party in Congo, seen as a moderate option for Congolese political participation. In 1956, he visited Belgium on an official study tour, a rare opportunity at the time. But shortly after returning, he was arrested for embezzlement. Whether the charges were politically motivated remained debated, but he was convicted and spent about a year in prison. But prison didn't end his activism. It sharpened his resolve. In 1958, Lumumba co-founded the MNC, the Congolese National Movement, a party that aimed to unite Congolese people across regional and ethnic lines. It quickly became a powerful force. That same year, he attended the All-African People's Conference in Ghana, where his views aligned with the Pan-Africanism and the anti-colonial solidarity. As Belgium finally began planning a gradual transition to independence, Lumumba pushed for more immediate change. His calls for boycotts and protests led to further arrests, but the MNC was growing, especially in Stanleyville, where it won overwhelming support in the 1959 elections. By the early 1960s, international and local pressure pushed Belgium to organize the Round Table Conference with Congolese leaders. The MNC refused to attend this if Patrice Lumumba was not released immediately. And so, that's exactly what happened. Patrice Lumumba was freed and flown to Brussels to attend the conference. The conference set a date for Congolese independence, June 30, 1960. In the May elections that followed, the MNC emerged as the dominant force, and Lumumba was asked to form the new government. The joy of independence was short-lived. Just days after handover, sections of the army rebelled. They were upset that Belgian officers still held command. Civil unrest followed, and violence spread across the country. At the same time, Moise Tshombe, the leader of the mineral-rich Katanga province, declared secession. This wasn't just a political move. It was backed by the Belgian business interests and military support. Belgium deployed troops claiming to protect its nationals, but in reality, it was trying to preserve access to Congo's vast natural resources. As Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba was thrust into chaos. His government was brand new, his army was divided, Belgian troops refused to withdraw, and foreign media attention turned him into an overnight symbol, but also into a target. When the United States declined to provide military help, Lumumba turned to the United Nations, appealing for peacekeepers to restore order and force Belgian withdrawal. The UN sent troops, but under strict orders. They were not to interfere with the Congolese internal politics. According to Brian Urquhart, a senior UN official at the time, the peacekeepers were caught in a bind, tasked with maintaining order, yet prohibited from actively backing any one side. Urquhart later described Lumumba as incredibly difficult to help. He said he was overwhelmed, unprepared, and often resistant to compromise. He said Lumumba was deeply nationalistic, but politically inexperienced. But tensions inside the Congolese government soon boiled over. On September 5th, President Joseph Kasavubu announced that Lumumba would be dismissed. But Lumumba called the dismissal illegal and tried to continue governing. The stalemate was broken by Colonel Joseph Mobutu, who, with quiet support from the Western powers, seized control of the government in a coup on the 14th of September. Lumumba was placed under house arrest, still under joint watch, by both the UN peaceseekers and Mobutu's soldiers. But Lumumba wasn't one to sit quietly. In late November, he escaped house arrest with a convoy, attempting to reach Stanleyville, where his supporters were still active. He never made it. On December 1st, Lumumba was captured by Mobutu's forces and flown back to Leopoldville, later renamed Kinshasa. He was imprisoned in Thiesville military camp, where the soldiers reportedly remained sympathetic to him. Fearing another escape or rescue, authorities decided to remove him, and this time permanently. On January 17, 1961, Lumumba was flown to Elizabethville in Katanga. Accompanying him were Joseph Kitiko, Vice President of the Senate, and Maurice Mpolo, the Minister of Youth and Sports. On the flight, all three of them were beaten severely, their faces bloodied, their bodies bruised. They were driven to a remote house under the supervision of Belgian officers and Katangan officials. There, they were tortured for hours, punched, kicked, whipped with belts. Later that night, a firing squad was assembled. Lumumba, Otiko, and Mpolo were executed one by one by the Katangan soldiers under the direction of Belgian officers. Their deaths were recorded in handwritten notes by Belgian Police Commissioner Gerald Suti, who later admitted to being present. But the horror did not end there. To ensure the bodies could never be recovered or turned into symbols, Suti and other Belgian officers dug up the corpses, dismembered them with saws, and dissolved the remains in sulfuric acid. Teeth and bone fragments were kept as souvenirs. The Katangan government waited nearly a month to announce Lumumba's death, claiming falsely that he escaped and was killed by villagers. But the truth began to leak almost immediately, and protests erupted across Africa and beyond. Still, it would take decades for the full truth to officially be acknowledged. In 2001, Belgium admitted moral responsibility for its role in Lumumba's killing. And in 2022, Belgium formally returned Lumumba's only remains, a single tooth, to his family in a public ceremony. Lumumba was gone, but his legend had only just begun. His death caused a scandal across Africa and beyond. And in the years that followed, even his enemies had no choice but to call him what he truly was, a national hero. So why did Patrice Lumumba provoke such strong reactions? Was it admiration or fear? His political ideals weren't uncommon for the time. He believed in national unity, African independence, and rejecting colonial interference. But Lumumba was uncompromising. He demanded immediate change and was willing to challenge foreign powers directly. This resolve earned him many enemies. In the Cold War context, even his brief interaction, or cooperation rather, with the Soviets painted him as a potential communist ally. Although UN official Brian Urquhart said that Lumumba wasn't interested in ideology, he was more interested in receiving help from whoever was offering it. To many in the West, he became a threat. To many across Africa, he became a martyr. His death caused outrage and mourning across the continent. Streets, universities, statues were named in his honor. And over time, even his critics came to recognize him as a symbol of African dignity, ambition, and resistance. Lumumba's political career was brief. His leadership had flaws. He struggled with governance and faced valid criticism for his decisions during crisis. But his impact was profound. He gave a voice to a new generation of Africans who demanded the right to govern themselves. He did not live long, but his life and his legacy continue to force us to ask ourselves questions like leadership at the time, what it took, and the cost of independence. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end of this video, double thank you. I enjoyed researching about Patrice Lumumba and actually learning more about the events that led to his unfortunate demise. I always heard about his name, but I never fully understood the story. And I'm still learning, if I'm being honest. So this was one of those stories that I truly appreciate learning about. If you guys feel like I left anything out, feel free to put that in the comments section. Let's learn together, you know. But yeah, until next time, as we share more stories that connect us closer to our roots. Bye.